done it again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Fallout. But I say good evening. It's the first time all week. It genuinely will start in the evening and will finish in the evening, Dan. How awesome is that?
It's a revelation, isn't it? I'm being quite used to getting tucked into bed at 1:30 in the morning this week. So this is very, very interesting tonight.
Well, unless we manage to talk for an hour and 14 minutes about two games, one of which was very one-sided, and look ahead to a final tomorrow. But I highly doubt that. So, yeah, guys, you're in for an early night. Plenty of time, actually, to jump over and watch the finals night of the Motor Super Series, week number 12, the penultimate chance for the players to qualify for Champions Week. And I presume, as is the normal, they will be announcing the week 12 lineup, which I've already seen and is exceptional. In fact, if we can get this stream to 30 likes, I may even spill it here.
That would be amazing, because I've not seen it yet. So I will be finding out along with everybody else tonight, which is fun.
I'm just asking for permission now that I've said that, but you never know. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, semi-final night of the BoyleSports World Grand Prix in Leicester. First of all, Dan, a full crowd. That is what the arena is supposed to look like.
Yeah, big difference, wasn't it? You could tell all the way through from the very, very start of the introduction tonight. You could tell that it was a full crowd that were well up for it, that had come to see an exciting night of top level darts.
It was indeed. Well, they anticipated a night of top level darts. Whether or not they received that is a different matter. I thought they were well behaved for the most part. The few pantomime boos for Gerwyn, Price's walk on. But in the most, I generally think they were better than they have been throughout the week as well. Whether or not that's because it was so much busier that the individual shouts and...
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think it's a drowning out of, what we saw earlier in the week. I think there were no more shouts than we normally see at an event. They were just so much more apparent because of the lack of background noise and shouts and Colo Toure chants that drown it all down.
It was. And I asked this on social media as well, Dan. I appreciate we're stalling a little bit here, but we've got time tonight to have a conversation. But where do you stand on darts, songs and chants? Because I've seen a lot of crowds get slated for being too quiet or too empty. Then you see certain songs get picked off. No one likes Yaya, Colo, it's a football song, not even relevant, Stand Up If You Love the Darts has been done for about 30 years. It's getting on a bit. Boring tables and Can't Afford a Table or Feed the Stands or whatever. It's more of a Christmas one, but it again overdone. The Icelandic clap got absolutely slated when it was a thing. There's only one Phil Taylor. Well, he's been gone nearly 10 years now. And then all the other ones that sneak in from football, whether it's been Scotland get battered or Forest get battered tonight or whatever. And I put it to you that football is, as a sport, have the most creative fans in terms of singing songs. You don't really get it anywhere else. You don't turn up to rugby with blokes in chinos and whatever shoes you want to call it, and saying that and singing along to some rugby sort of song that they've made up. It's natural that it transfers from football a little bit. And actually, I put it to you that them singing those songs all night creates a better atmosphere in the background, less likely the players get put off, and it's just better all around. Whether or not you like the songs or not in their individualness, the fact they're singing is better than nothing.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of a chant and a sing song, and I have been many a time leading, and if not leading, certainly participating in a song at a darts event. My personal view is I'm a big fan of chants and songs that relate to a particular player that is on the stage at the time. I'm here for that all day long, and also something that is a bit interesting and a bit relevant. Like the Toure chant, I would happily remove from the stadium anyone that's caught doing that. Just because I just find it just irritating. I think it's just that particular song that irritates the life out of me. And I have, I know there's a few of the other team and maybe some even in the chat room that have been at darts events with me where I refuse to stand up if I love the darts. I refuse to have my
I sat down all night on Thursday and my friends are like, what are you doing? And I was like, do you have any idea how many times I've been in a crowd? Like, the novelty of standing up because I love darts has long worn off on me.
The line I often use is I refuse to have my love of darts publicly tested by whether or not I'm willing to stand up and sit down.
I will not bow down to this social peer pressure.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not being peer pressured into trying to prove my love for the darts. I think as well. The I've not been to Leicester. I'm not sure how good and how sturdy the seats are. But there are some venues that we get to. I'm thinking Blackpool and one or two others where the seats aren't amazing, and up and down off them all the time is just not my bag. But no, I'm a big fan of it. I like to hear it. I like to hear it when I'm watching on the television. There are particular songs that aren't quite to my taste, but I very much like to hear the party atmosphere and songs. But no, I think, I'm all for a Nathan Aspinall chant when he's on the stage, Peter Wright when he's on the stage. I think that's what it's all about.
I just think there's a lack of fan bases big enough for individual players that just support them, that are crazy enough to go out and do that. So until we've got a Nathan Aspinall supporters club that's got 300,000 people in there and 30,000 people that turn up every single week to go and watch them, you're going to struggle to get those kind of songs. Hello to a few people in the chat room then. Let's actually start looking at the darts. Reese is in, as is Kieran and Jack. I won't go through your little debate at the very, very start, but good to see you having a conversation. Colin is in. He says, evening. Preston, evening. Here we go. Paddy is in as well, as is Rose, who says, evening. Early one tonight. Yep, thank Christ. Kieran says, evening as well. HJV's gone early. He says, Aspinall in the Premier League 2023. Look, it is October. I'm still a little bit hesitant about that discussion, but yeah, there we go. Nathan was phenomenal tonight as well. Boise is in. He's been on the ale tonight, or everything but the ale by the looks of it. It says, Fallout Bar Dream Game. Every time Dan Simpson says Glenn Durrant, me and Haley have a shot.
Glenn Durrant.
Apparently it's the same every time I say stupid, which means you're playing a stupid game. So that's 5 between you. Brilliant. What a night. Henry says, evening. Excalibur's in as well. And then a few more comments about the songs. Kieran says, I don't mind any songs as long as it's respectful. Haley agrees with no football chants at the darts. Then create a songbook for us, Haley. You've already created some wonderful playlists for Mr. Boyce.
I was at the Players' Championship Finals last year down in Minehead. I was lucky enough to my mate that I travelled with, that we got sat on a table with a group of 6 lads from Scotland who had essentially their own songbook, and it was absolutely superb. And what was great is if you're there, you've got 6 sessions on the bounce, and you end up sat with the same tables to your left and right and in front and behind. And by the end of the Players' Championship Finals, by that match between Ryan Searle and Peter Wright, everybody in the sort of quarter of the stadium where we were singing along with these songs that they were started on the Friday by these 6 guys from Scotland, just singing the songs they'd written on the way down. And that's what it's all about for me. The atmosphere was brilliant. There was a bit of creativity to it. It was relevant and really good fun.
I like that, but like I said, we just don't have those fan bases to inject it into the sport, do we? I think we see a few more on the Euro Tour now. The influx of German fans at the World Championship a couple of years ago started to diversify it a little bit as well, but we're still struggling a little bit as well. An excellent question. You're not passed out yet, Lee. No, somehow he's still going. Rose says the Euro Tour have a club version of the Tour song in their playlist for the breaks. They do, and I'm a big, big fan of it. The Euro Tour DJ is my life aspiration, and I have no musical sense whatsoever. And also, Rose says, oh no, not the Premier League discussion. Hey. Yeah, definitely not. Right, let's move on. Let's actually look at the darts tonight, which means I need to actually open this screen. First game up, being billed as a stun, being billed as a shock. Yes, Gerwyn Price was the world number 1 at the start of the week. Now Gerwyn Price is not the world number 1. But performance-wise throughout the week, I think this was a coin toss at the start of the game, and Nathan Aspinall was the man who held it together the most.
Yeah, I don't want to say it came down to bottle alone, because both players, played. Some of the checkouts we saw in that match were superb, and we saw some incredible scoring as well. But Nathan just held it together at all the most important moments. He got in when Gezi couldn't get in, and he got out when Gezi couldn't get out, and that was that he just held it together. I think you used the exact right phrase there, Jack, and he did a really, really good job. And with you, I don't think it was the big underdog upset that some people are badging it up to be, but it was a hell of a performance, and in more than just dart skill. Like, there was a number of different layers to what made that a top performance from Nathan Aspinall, and his ability to throw darts was only one of them.
Yeah, finishing stats excellent. 55% on the outer ring, 7 180s, 10 140s, 40 scores of 100 plus from Nathan Aspinall. And my thoughts on this tournament have changed an awful lot in this week, and I think this performance proves that a little bit more. When you think about this tournament, pre-event, James Wade is always the one that everybody goes, this should be perfect for him, because he is one of the best double hitters in the world. It's not about being a good double hitter. It's about scoring a shed load once you're in, and if your opponent is not in, and the pressure that can create, or your scoring power to get you back in the leg if you're slow to hit a double. The big scorers are winning this, and that scoring performance from Nathan Aspinall tonight was superb.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail exactly on the head there. And he just had, I never thought I'd say it, to be honest, he had too much for Gezi, in that Gezi Price, the way that he scores and the way that he plays, certainly the levels that he's hit this week and the gears that he's been able to find, doesn't really matter if he can play his way out of not getting in early. So, we've seen this week, he's scored his way out of trouble. When he hasn't been able to get in straight away, he's scored a bag full of points, and he's been able to balance it. And Aspinall just didn't let him today. He didn't allow Gezi to make those mistakes, and he just couldn't score his way out of trouble.
Yeah, as for Gezi, look, out at the semi-finals, first time he's failed to reach the final in 3 years. I've been saying all week that I feel this tournament is made for him, because he's so good on that 20 segment, tops and treble 20, that you just expect him to go 160, 180, 140 straight down the line. Hasn't really happened for him this week, which is a little bit disappointing for him, especially as, like I said, him failing to reach the final means he loses his status as world number one once again.
Yeah, and I think it was a bit of a shock. I think what was a bit of a shock tonight was the last 2 sets that we saw from Gezi before he came out onto the stage tonight were absolutely world class. We sat here the other day talking about how impressive the way that he finished that match off was, and the momentum that he'd built and the gear that he'd found in order to do it. And he looked sort of back to square one. He hadn't managed to and I appreciate he's had he's had some time in between, but he just couldn't keep that momentum going at all.
Yeah, and once again, one more thing before we do hear from Nathan Aspinall. I think that one is ready for us to go. It is. Rose says, Asp did say he likes being the underdog. I think that's a massively underrated part of Nathan Aspinall's game, to be honest. When he is the favourite, when he's got a target on his back, I do not think he enjoys it. And after that UK Open win, after that win in America a couple of years ago, I think that hindered him a little bit. People sat up, started taking more notes of him. The fact he's taken time away from the game, had to rebuild and work his way back up again, has given him the underdog status once again, despite when he's on his game, he's a top 8 player in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I had him personally, and he's proved me wrong all week. But early in this stage, whether the bookies had him as an underdog or not, I was thinking he was the underdog. We didn't quite know the condition he's in. We don't know how comfortable he is. We don't know where he's at mentally with his recovery. And he's become a bit of an underdog now because there's a bit of mystique and to where he's at, and no one quite knows other than him and those closest to him. So I think you're dead right. He's managed to regain that status at the minute. Sometimes playing a player who's ranked further down the rankings than he is.
Yeah, 100%. And this is absolutely not because Lee Boyce will have to do a shot if I say his name, but it's very similar to Glenn Doran in that regard. He loves being the underdog.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still think that when those two played each other in very, very big matches, it was particularly interesting because you almost got the sense that both of them wanted to be the underdog and wanted to be, wanted to feel like they were up against it, and it made for a really strange dynamic, I think. But he's I will come to it in a bit, but I certainly don't think he's going to be anything other than viewed and perceived as the underdog for the next 24 hours. So I think that underdog status is going to be something he can carry with him, certainly for the rest of this tournament.
Yeah, Tom Brady has made an absolute career out of telling everybody that he is the underdog and riling up his teammates to say they're being written off once again. Nathan Aspinall, very, very similar, and Glenn Durham before that. Let's then hear from the Asp after his victory over Gerwyn Price as he's reached the final. The BoyleSports World Grand Prix.
Michael was amazing last night, but for me, Gerwyn Price is the best player in the world, and I'm thinking just don't come off this break and hit top. But then, likewise for myself, I was a bit nervous the last two legs, so it gave me time to come off stage and try and take some deep breaths, and it worked out well. I think it's massive. Nothing set in stone, but. I'm probably the most open guy who does media, and I want to be in the Premier League. I want to be in the World Series. I want to travel the world. I love my job. I've got the best job in the world, but I want to beat with the big boys. I believe I'm a big guy. I think I proved it this week. I beat number 4, 9, and 2 in the world. What does that tell you? And I want to be in everything next year. Yes, the calendar is ridiculous, and I might have about 2 days off all year, thanks to the calendar, but I don't care. I live and breathe darts, and I hope to God that I can win tomorrow and be in everything.
Interesting thoughts from Nathan Aspinall. Once again, talking up the Premier League. Please just leave it alone. I hate that.
I thought that as soon as I sort of winced in my seat when he said Premier League. And I thought he immediately shut that down by listing a load of other events as well that he wanted to, and then I thought, all right, he's just talking generally about getting his career back to there. I think I was quite pleased that he didn't focus, really narrowly on that. Give me that spot in the Premier League. It was, I winced a bit and then relaxed.
I'm not even sure that's the key part of the interview, that you can listen to it full on our YouTube channel, by the way. I think Phil Biles just puts that in deliberately so that I say it's stupid rather than that anybody else reacts to that. Yes, I did just say stupid as well, Mr. Boyce and Haley. And speaking of stupid, Dan, Peter Wright's performance tonight when he chopped and changes his darts once again, absolutely demolished by Michael van Gerwen, who averages just over 90, 91.64. Peter Wright was not at the races, 4-0 in sets, 12-1 in legs. A few chances. Look, he finishes 1 from 20 on the outer ring in the end. But this tournament, more than any other, will catch up to you if you are constantly changing darts. If you're chopping and changing another event, you find the line and the length on the treble 20 pretty quickly. You do an awful lot of practice on that treble 20. You spend most of your time throwing at those trebles. It's easier. I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world to change darts as frequently as Peter Wright does. It's easier to get your range back, get your rhythm back, and start attacking it. When you are chasing doubles, the way that Peter Wright was tonight, he had absolutely no range on that top bed to get in to start with, switching around. When you've got a different set of darts in your hand, different weight, different centre of gravity, slightly different grip, the way that he modifies his throw all over, in this event, stupid.
Yeah, I think it's madness. And that's the other thing is, we've seen players this week, and I don't like the term playing it safe, but playing the edges a little bit and giving themselves some margin for error. Going for double 16s, going for double 18s. You've got more margin for error than you have going in off tops. Now, if you are going to keep changing the darts that are in your hand, you're going to change weight and grip, and you're going to change flight and everything else. When you're doing that and you're still going to go in tops and give yourself no margin for error whatsoever on length rather than line, you are really, really going to be up against it. And I worried for Peter when that 167 went in leg one, and because I thought first of all, we all know what Michael's like when he gets ahead of steam. And I think, something. It's rare that he does something like that in the first leg. You think, all right, he's already there. He hasn't worked up to it. That's how he's hit it. And I did worry then that Peter would go into panic mode, and I think that's what we saw with that, the constant changing of darts. That's what it was, panic mode, and it was he knew he needed to find an almost flawless performance, and every time he let go of a dart, when it wasn't flawless, he went looking for something else to try and get that, almost blaming the kit rather than its user, I think.
Yeah, there was no need for the 167, which probably sums it up even more. If it was a steal, then Peter Wright might feel a little bit better about himself. But the fact he wasn't on a finish, was so far back, he's like, hang on, I'm not even landing a glove on him at the minute as it is. But if he's going to start doing that when he doesn't need, and then as the game goes on and Wright's missing chances and he's a set behind, he's 2 sets behind, the outer ring's not quite going, you're thinking, how and where is this comeback going to start? And
there is a point.
The pressure builds.
There is a point as well where, you know, even for the very best players in the world, it can get a bit too far away. You know, once you've got to 3-0 and you've won a leg, like you are a long way. You know, it is a very, very long road back then. And I think we saw him panic even more at that stage.
Well, even with the performance from Michael, there was still extra gears there needed. He was 8 points down on his average from the night before. When Peter Wright did get going in the third set and win a leg, he had a chance to then double it up in the following leg, missed a handful of doubles, and you think, hang on, if he goes in 2 apiece here, he got a darts in the deciding leg in that set, the comeback can start, because that's only 2-1 in sets at that point. But that moment there, just let it get away from him.
And that's it. We've seen, you know, the beauty of set play is, you know, you can be masses of legs behind in the grand scheme of things, but you can grab a setback and then you're only 1 set away, and then once you know and Michael talks a lot about the right things at the right time, and for me, I think Peter tonight did too much of the wrong things at the wrong time, and there was key moments where, you know, a double here and a double there will turn a game, but 1 out of 20 isn't going to get you over the line in the dog and duck.
Well, at that point, he actually had more darts at a double to finish a leg than Michael van Gerwen did. Admittedly, Peter's missing handfuls of 3 at a time in that sequence, and Michael might be hitting it first time, so he could have earned more if he'd hit it last starting hand every single time. But when you have more darts at a double than your opponent in a match like that was so one-sided, you're going to look at that as a takeaway and think, what on earth have I done there?
Yeah, nothing went right. You know, there was. I mean, through 3 more 180s than Michael. Like there's, you know, through 4 maxes to Michael's 1. You know, if you look at the stats, it's an unusual set of stats for Peter Wright, but nothing stands out more than the doubling. And you know, the game. I think the way the game got on top of Peter and Michael getting away and everything else that came with that, the root of that Peter missed some very key doubles where he did have opportunities. Michael wasn't smashing him to pieces and not giving him chances. That's not. The scoreline looks like that, but that isn't what happened during the game. Peter did have opportunities to stay in that game and to make a match of it, and he just couldn't take advantage of them.
Right, before we discuss or hear from Michael van Gerwen, I've just been sent a little bit of a teaser of what might be included in that clip. So let's discuss the elephant in the room. This week, more than anything, has been a war of words rather than a battle of wits on the hockey at the minute. Gerwyn, Price, Peter Wright, Michael van Gerwen have all had their say. I don't want to start stirring things here, but in my opinion, it was started by Peter Wright at the start of the week. He was the first one to sound off, brought the others into it. If you're going to start something like that, you better make sure you're the one to finish it.
I don't think he sees it like that, you know. And I might be completely wrong. Is that I just think it's an element that he wants to add to his game. You know, I think, you know, we look at Peter and we look at Peter Wright is a man that thinks there's a lot more to winning darts matches than throwing darts at the board, and that's evident by the amount of times he changes his darts and changes his setup and does everything else that he does. And I think that this engaging in mind games is another element that Peter Wright thinks will add to his game, whether that's for himself or whether he's doing that for himself and he wants to be engaged in that, whether he's doing it because he thinks it plays games with everybody else. I don't know, but I think I'm not convinced that it is a case that he feels he has to back it up because he says it. I just think he sees that now as part of his approach to playing professional darts at the highest level, is that he's going to do mind game. He's referenced this week, seeing other players do it and learning, how that's been, and Phil Taylor doing things backstage and speaking to people, and I just think he now just sees that as another tool in his arsenal as he moves through his career.
Is it a tool for him though, or is it getting to the point where it's having the adverse effect? It is firing up players like Michael van Gerwen, who for a long, long time was as mentally strong as we've seen Phil Taylor in the past, who is renowned for being the very, very best at this. He made a fair few enemies in his time to Phil Taylor, but 9 times out of 10 he came out on top. He had his battles with Peter Manley, he's had war of words with Kevin Painter, Paul Nicholson, etc. in the past, but Taylor won all of those. He learned from Eric Bristow, who was very, very good at it. Even when Michael started chatting, Phil Taylor still has a positive record against Michael van Gerwen in every single televised event but the Premier League. Mm-hmm. That's some record for a man who was on his decline and MVP was
on the way down.
The best player of all time, by the way. It's amazing how often that doesn't get brought up. But in terms of Peter Wright, I was, as a first year uni student, walking into an environment, playing pool and darts, etc., and in any sport, I consider myself to be very much like Peter Wright. I was do a lot of talking first and try and back it up afterwards. And eventually, when you take that many bashings and knock down a peg a little bit, or you leave with egg on your face, or your face ends up the same colour as that Liverpool cushion behind me, it has a negative effect on the way that you approach things. And granted, Peter Wright over the last couple of years has had his most successful years as a dart player ever. 2 world championships, a world match play, and God knows else what, being world number 1 for the very, very first time. But unless you're going into an event at the very, very top of your game, do you think he's now at the point where he feels like he has to do it every event because he's done it before?
Yeah, I think it's become part of his character.
Yeah,
I think it's as much part. And let's be really honest. Peter Wright comes out tonight wearing taco-themed trousers with a multicoloured mohawk and his head painted. Like the Peter Wright that we, the public, see as a professional sportsman is a character. Mm-hmm. He is a character. Snakebite is a character played by Peter Wright, and I think he sees that those mind games and that talking that's part of the Snakebite character, isn't it? I think that's what he sees. It's part of the persona that he's created, and it's part of the. And I'm not sure he knows how to unpick it and how to undo it and where to stop.
Indeed. Right, let's then hear from Michael van Gerwen. We've made you wait long enough. See what he had to say in his post-match press conference.
I think Peter really underperformed. He didn't play well. I think his darts were absolute crap, and then maybe we win this game. And it was quite easy, to be fair. I wasn't struggling 1 point in the game, and that gives you confidence. That makes you hungry for more. And yeah, thanks for that.
Like you say, Peter didn't perform. I know you're one that likes to judge players in the practice room. Did you get that sense that he wasn't at the races tonight before you went up?
No, but with all due respect, he's been getting away with murder in the last few games, because I think Dimitri had 5 match darts to beat him and things like that. But then you still have to beat Peter Wright. Peter Wright is a phenomenal player. I got a lot of respect for him, but he needs to shut him out and just throw his darts, and that's where his strength is, and not when he talks too much, he's only going to put him off, and everyone knows that, but he never learns.
Premier League, World Match Play, final here tomorrow. Yeah. Plenty of TV tournaments coming up. Can you do the clean sweep between now and the end of the Worlds?
Why not? Why couldn't I? If you look to the performance, how I've been playing, of course, in the last tournament I've won, I've not been on my best, but now I start to do some great damage again. And when I'm started doing that, They all know what they have to do to beat me, and that's not easy. That's not going to be easy for them, especially whenever the guys I'm going to meet is going to be far in the tournament normally. So I just need to do the thing what's right for me and keep this performance going, and I feel comfortable.
I like that from Michael van Gerwen.
Yeah,
I want to go back to that conversation we had about Phil Taylor era and when MVG would sound off and try and have those battles and etc. I think there was a growth there from Michael van Gerwen, a maturing of, look, in the past, if somebody called him out, he'd walk in that room, he'd sit there with a smug grin and go, come at me, and sound off straight back on his opponent. He still keeps going with the same line. If I'm at my best, everybody knows I'm the best and they've got to come and beat me. That takes some restraint, I think, from a character who is still quite fiery and able to just sound off on anybody at any point, because he's usually had the ability to back it up.
Yeah, and I think we have. We've seen a little bit of a resurgence, this year from Michael van Gerwen. We had a few years. It seems unusual to say we had a few years where he didn't win the World Championships. And I think what he's done is he's not so much reinvented himself, but he's had a resurgence this year where he's won some big events and he's come back around. But he does seem to have done it, as you say, with a level of maturity that we've not seen from him before, and it's quite refreshing in a way, because you can't be a darts fan and not enjoy watching Michael van Gerwen play darts. So you can't be, because when he is on form and playing his best, it's a very, very beautiful thing to watch. And I quite like that he's sort of pushed all that other stuff aside and he's removed that, and there's no drama, and he's just performing, and that's what he wants to be judged on, and that's what he's there to do and all about. I think you're right, it shows a level of maturity that we've not seen previously, but I'm all for it. I think it's definitely a positive move for him, and again, I've said it a couple of times this week, it's terrifying for everybody else.
Does that make him more dangerous? The fact that he is so much more relaxed on his way back to the top. He's not getting above and beyond himself. He's just calmly going about it. There is a steeliness to Michael van Gerwen, even in the face of terrible form 12 months ago, where he went trophyless or TV titleless for 12 months, which was unheard of for Michael van Gerwen. He was titleless for 14, 15 months. That doesn't happen to Michael van Gerwen. And yet he kept saying the same things. He never lost his cool once, not in front of the media cameras or anything like that anyway. And to the common dart fan, nobody would know any different that Michael van Gerwen went titleless for 15 months and is on his way back up to the top. You'd look at him tonight, you'd look at the way he's talking in the media and everything else and go, actually, the darts are pretty similar to what he was dominant with now. There's been no conversation about the darts for at least 6 months now, the actual physical barrel. That seems to just be settled.
Yeah, it's gone, hasn't it? It's gone, completely been put to bed.
He's doing everything that makes him look like he is the best player in the world again. He's won the Premier League, he's won the match plays in the final of the Grand Prix, and he just doesn't seem to have cared.
But I think, and that's what I think makes him a terrifying and dangerous prospect for everybody else. And I think, he has been in his career susceptible to some mind games, to becoming riled, to becoming, too involved in things that weren't just throwing darts at the board. And I don't think there's any coincidence that that's where Peter Wright focuses, on an awful lot of what he does. If Peter Wright can be playing anybody in the world, he'll go and give an interview about Michael van Gerwen. And the reason I think for that is that Peter thinks that for the longest time Michael was susceptible to that sort of thing. Michael can shut that out. Then that element that people could have had over him, that extra hook somebody could put in isn't there, and they've got to just beat him on the dartboard, and that's very, very difficult to do.
They have. Now on to the important question, Dan. Can Nathan Aspinall beat him on the dartboard tomorrow?
He can.
You knew that was coming, surely.
I was prepared for it. He can beat him on the board tomorrow. I don't think he will. I think he goes close, but I don't think he will. He's definitely capable. He's beaten him plenty of times before. He's beaten him in big events before. But he's beaten him on the television. I don't think that happens tomorrow. I think
out there head to head in the last 5 years, played 11 times. It's 8-3 for Michael van Gerwen.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I suppose they both had a dip at the same time, didn't they? So
yeah, and I almost feel like I'm foolish in doing so because I've picked against Nathan in pretty much every round of this event, and he's made a fool out of me all the way through the tournament. But I just can't see a scenario. This morning, I couldn't see a winner of this tournament that wasn't Michael van Gerwen. Before these matches tonight, I couldn't see anyone other than Michael winning it, and I've got to just stick with how I felt really for the last 48 hours.
Interesting scoreline.
5-3. 3-3, then 5-3.
Oh, an extra layer to it. You know what? I think I completely agree with you. He just looks imperious when he needs it. I think he's got the extra gear. If one of these players needs to get near that 100 average to get over the line, I see that from Michael more than I see that from Nathan. If he can keep it tight, if he can keep scrapping, if he can keep putting Michael under pressure, and if he can keep doing the most Michael thing of all, which is do the right things at the right moment, give him a chance. That's the sport of darts all over, isn't it? And it would be fantastic for the sport of darts to see Nathan Aspinall lift another major title as well. It would surely put him in the Premier League as he wants, definitely in contention for some of the World Series events, and would really not shake things up, but in a year where last year and the year before we saw so many different winners, if Michael van Gerwen is to go back and dominate things and lift every single title, the conversations we're currently having about world number one, if he goes on to win the World Championship, are null and void for 18 months all over again. And I quite like talking about world number one, and I think the players do as well.
And I think, there's an element of me that thinks there's an awful lot of talk about world number one at the moment, because everybody knows that there's some big money tournaments happening. Or let's be honest, almost back to back. Like we've got a really tightly packed couple of months of major tournaments, and there's some players with some big money to drop off if they don't win or become finalists in them. So, there's a lot of talk about that now, and that's potentially because in a month or two's time, that conversation's completely irrelevant, and we're all just talking about Michael van Gerwen again.
Yeah, I mean, you say the next couple of months are busy back-to-back. I was having a look through the calendar today. My next free weekend is April. And I think that might be a stretch because the Euro Tour goes absolutely berserk. Next year, darts is non-stop. Right, that is a wrap for the BoyleSports World Grand Prix. I mean, we've reached 21 likes. I asked for 30. And I know I'm allowed to give you the first 6. So I will give you Group A. For Group B and C, you'll have to keep an eye out on social media, and they're definitely going to announce it between the semi-finals this evening. So Group A of the Super Series next week, Chris Mason, who has been telling everybody he's playing all the time anyway. He's let the cat out of the bag very, very early. Gary Robson, John Boy Walton, the World Seniors latest edition, Mark Dubbridge, Tony O'Shea, and Wes Newton.
That is a lineup.
And I'm telling you now, the other 6 players are just as interesting as that as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's a proper lineup, that, Cobb.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I'm not leaving YouTube next week. Those 6, plus the 6 to come in afterwards as well. Very good.
It's a very, very cool mix of players. There's some really good games to be had, I think, across that.
Yeah. So, Champions Finals night of week 11 is still underway on our YouTube channel. You guys can head over there and watch it now. Let's see who won the poll, by the way. 70% say Michael van Gerwen will pick up the title tomorrow night. No fallout bar Tomorrow night, as a post-reaction to the show, we'll be straight on to Monday night's live lounge. Myself, Phil Bars will be back from Leicester, and Lee Boyce might have sobered up by then.
Glenn
Yes, got a few more Glenn Durrants in there for you, Boise, and I'll chuck a stupid in there for good measure to say goodnight to Hayley as well. And a good night to everybody that's watched us throughout this week. You guys have been absolute superstars. As I said, we'll see you on Monday for the live lounge.